That's Nikki Dordain Mediation. I want to have a brief conversation about philosophy. So, and why it's important, because I talked about how your philosophy changes in an earlier video, but I really want to talk about why it's important, which I only touched on that video, and I realised that's really what I should started talking about. Philosophy is important to underpin your energy work, whether it's psychic, mediumship, shamanistic, any of those, or energy healing modalities. It is because it shapes your practice, because it underpins it. If you don't believe something, then why would you then be working with that energy? Why would you then be connecting to that? And why would you then be using that? Or when you're working with clients, it's kind of like if you've got very different philosophies, it will often be very difficult to connect. And because it underpins your practice and how you practice your art, what you do versus what you don't do, what fits in. So when I started obviously with astrology, I was already a professional medium and psychic medium and tarot reader, etc., and done energy healing. So I came to it with that philosophy and belief system underpinning. So everything that I do and every tool or skill that I pick up has to fit into that, has to be used, and that also has to underpin. So when I was learning astrology, you look at it differently because there are certain things that don't fit because they are somebody else's belief system or philosophy. Or for instance, astrology, you don't need it because you don't need to have that underpinning. But because it's very strong if you're doing any energy work, you have to understand how you're going to work with this tool or this modality. And if you are working with a good example is I work a lot, if you're doing energy work, you work a lot with the non-physical, and therefore you need to have something that values the non-physical as well as it values the physical. So not just events that happen, but internal, external energy events, different types of energies that you're working with. If you are then trying to, fit into another tool that doesn't value that, or doesn't give you that language or the language doesn't include your experiences, then how can you integrate it into your practice? And you don't want to start working with things that don't resonate with you, don't hit, because there's lots of things out there that lots of tools out there, but if you don't have to use each one. Not everyone will suit everybody, and it's really important that you pick, in your toolkit there is everything that's right for you, and it will permeate all your work. So it's quite interesting. When I was I initially was trained with a lot of spiritualists in the UK. Most mediumship training is spiritualist training, which is a religion, and they have a philosophy of teaching life after death. Now, that to me didn't work because I already knew there was life after death, because I'd grown up knowing that on a personal level that there were entities and energies out there. So I didn't need to, and also a lot of things that they had in their structure of their belief system, which is a religion, didn't gel with me. So I took what was important from those teachings, but I chose to remove anything that linked to philosophy and belief system. But the one thing I found very interesting is that when you go to a spiritualist, especially because I was mostly doing physical mediumship, the energies that come through are limited by that. So you won't get any non-physical entities, any non-earth entities also. You'll only get other spiritualists or other religious figures. You don't tend to get, or ones of similar philosophy, you don't get the energies that I was starting to work with. And I found that very interesting because and it's part in because you limit yourself in the fact that you say, this is what I believe, and therefore, you are the conduit. So if you don't believe in something, or you don't leave it open to it, then at no point are you going to be able to connect to it, to accept it, connect to it, interact with it, because it's like it's going to be invisible, or it's going to be, it's going to be through that filter, and it won't get through. So that's why it's really important to understand yours. It's understanding, if you're going to somebody to support you and mentor you or train you, what their philosophy is, even if you're looking for a reading, because it's a bit, you can use the non-binary as a good excuse, or the whole idea of monogamy being the only relationship type. If you aren't interested in a monogamous relationship, or if you are non-binary, then you need to pick somebody who's going to talk to you in your language, and rather than going and trying to use the model of the old model of what relationships were meant to be, and what the genders were, because that's not going to connect to your belief system, it's not going to connect to your philosophy and yourself. So it's really important that you know who you're going to and their philosophy and their belief system, because it can limit that reading. You can come out of it going, well, actually, that's not what I wanted. Also, if I talked about, you're having readings with people, and you might automatically, as a reader, this is why it's really important to think about these things, is you might automatically assume that a woman is looking for a man. And that is itself limiting, because you've made an assumption rather than taking what you're given. You've just made an assumption and you've made a leap. And that happens quite a lot. And I think it's really important to find, when you're looking for somebody to support you or to get a reading, that you understand where they're coming from and what could limit them in their reading of you or supporting of you. Because if you don't gel in that underlying philosophy, then you're not going to get what you want out of it. And it isn't really going to work if you're trying to work together. That relationship isn't. You have to have some connection. It doesn't have to be an exact same one, but you have to have some connection. And because it is so integral to how we live our lives in general, this is really important, because there's another facet. If you choose to be more active and more conscious of what you're doing as a psychic, as a medium, as an energy healer, then you are going to want to embody that. Not just say it, not just spout it, but embody that. And if I think that's a great thing, but it does mean that, if you embody something that's very limited, then you're going to limit who you can reach out to or who you can support. So, and you limit your experience, and you limit what can come through to you, the messages that can come through. Good example is if you are, probably a good example is if you've ever read Edgar Cayce's work. Now, I didn't read Edgar Cayce's till I had been professional a number of years. And what's interesting is he's very limited by his religious views, which so he has this lack of self-belief, but it also means if you read through his readings, he has this underlying thing of, well, you're married, you should stay married. Oh, you need to work this out. And that is not so much the energies he's working with, that is the restriction of his own philosophy and belief system. He believed that actually if you got married you had to stay together forever and you had to work through it, essentially. And that's a repeating theme if someone's talking about relationships, or there is that idea of sacrifice also. So there's, I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying that you will always have to listen to that and understand that if you aren't religious, you need to take that out a little bit, and you can see the theme it goes through. And that kind of still happens in the fact that if you have to translate it, a lot of books that I read, especially when I was reading astrology as a professional medium, I was like, this doesn't relate to me. I can't, because it doesn't relate to my philosophy or my belief system. It doesn't. And you spend a lot of time translating what they think they meant. So, you know, you want to work with people that don't have to translate. You also don't want to have to, you want to be able to have that connection with others. And also you want to connect with the energies that you're working with. You want to, if you're like me, you want to be able to kind of like see what's out there, open your mind, broaden it, and be able to kind of see what can you do, rather than go, this is my area and this is what I'm sticking to. You can really choose to kind of work, because obviously when you change, the energies that you connect to change as well. So when you are more open, you will get the opportunity to have some much more amazing experiences. And there's certain things I could never really put into words, because I was open enough to go, you know what, okay, you know, this is, you know, what is this? Or this is what I'm interested in, or I'm happy to see what's out there. So, you know, open yourself up a little bit, have a think about where you might be feeling a bit limited. And, you know, it just, I don't know really. This is both my videos this morning have been quite rambling. But yeah, so your philosophy underpins your practice, and it underpins what you can connect to, what you actually can see and sense. Because if you don't think it exists, you're not going to be able to sense or see it. Anyway, that's it for me today.